5:12 local time, Persian Gulf. Inside the Combat Information Center of a U.S. aircraft carrier, the radar picture changes. A new surface contact appears, then another, then three more. In just a few seconds, 5 fast-moving objects begin sliding across the tactical display, closing from the north at high speed. The radar operator leans in. 5 surface contacts bearing 027. A brief pause follows, then the update. Speed 28 knots and increasing. That is not normal commercial traffic. Merchant vessels do not speed up together. They do not move toward a carrier strike group in coordinated formation. Inside the carrier's Combat Information Center, the contacts are immediately marked and tracked. Data starts flowing across the consoles. Heading, speed, signal emissions. Seconds later, the classification appears. Iranian Navy surface combatants. The distance shows 38 nautical miles and falling. Up on the bridge, the sea seems calm. The Persian Gulf stretches flat and blue beneath the early morning sun. Sailors stand watch along the rails. Flight deck crews move between parked aircraft, preparing for routine operations. Nothing on the horizon hints at tension. But inside the ship's sensor systems, the picture is already shifting. A calm voice breaks the silence on the bridge. 5 Iranian naval vessels approaching from the north. No one raises their voice. There is no need. The captain steps closer to the tactical display near the helm. His eyes move across the data without urgency. Carrier strike groups follow a simple rule: never rush, never panic. The carrier keeps its course, cutting steadily through the water at 20 knots. 2 guided missile destroyers hold the outer defensive ring, while a cruiser several miles away tracks both surface and air contacts. Every radar in the formation is now locked onto the same 5 ships. At 5:16, the first electronic signals begin appearing across the consoles. The Iranian vessels have activated their surface search radars. Low power, wide sweep. They are scanning the carrier group. The electronic warfare officer begins recording the emissions. Radar signature confirmed. Iranian naval pattern. The carrier group does not react, not yet. Distance to contact drops to 30 nautical miles, then 27. On the radar display, the 5 Iranian ships remain in a tight line abreast formation, moving side by side like steel arrows aimed directly at the American fleet. That formation alone is enough to draw attention. It is not random movement, it is deliberate pressure. At 5:18, the first radio call is sent over international maritime frequencies. Iranian naval vessels. This is a United States Navy carrier strike group operating in international waters. You are approaching at high speed. Alter course immediately. The radio remains silent. No reply. The radar operator keeps updating the track. Contacts accelerating now. 31 knots. That speed is unusual for routine patrol movement. It means the Iranian ships are pushing harder and closing faster. Inside the Combat Information Center, the closest point of approach calculation updates in real time. CPA 12 nautical miles. Time to CPA 14 minutes. On the bridge, the captain watches the numbers change. Then he gives his first order. Maintain course. No change in speed, no change in direction. The message is clear. The carrier strike group will not be pressured off its path. At 5:21, the pattern on the radar begins to change. The Iranian formation starts to open up. Instead of holding a straight line, the ships spread apart. One edges slightly west, another drifts east. The shape gradually bends into a wide arc. The tactical officer studies the movement. They're spreading. Another officer finishes the thought. Encirclement pressure formation. The Iranian ships are no longer simply approaching. They are positioning. On the tactical screen, the arc widens as the 5 vessels adjust heading and begin forming a loose semicircle around the carrier group. Distance now reads 21 nautical miles, still closing. At 5:24, the electronic warfare console lights up again. A narrow radar beam sweeps across the carrier strike group. Different frequency, stronger signal. The operator looks up. Possible fire control radar sweep. The room falls quiet. Fire control radar is a step closer to active targeting. It is not direct action, but it sends a message. On the bridge, the captain responds without hesitation. Set Condition 3. Across the carrier and its escort ships, the order moves instantly. Condition 3 means every critical combat station is now fully manned. Missile teams move into position. Radar operators tighten their focus on the approaching vessels. On the nearest destroyer, the heavy 5-inch gun slowly turns toward the horizon. Not enough to signal escalation, just enough to be noticed. The carrier keeps moving forward, steady and unchanged. Inside the Combat Information Center, the radar updates again. CPA 9 nautical miles. But now something else appears. A new signal lifts from the deck of one of the Iranian warships. The radar operator zooms in. The track rises quickly above the waterline. The operator's voice cuts through the room. Air contact just launched from one of the Iranian vessels. A beat passes, then confirmation. Helicopter heading toward the carrier. The helicopter climbs above the Iranian warship, its rotor blades slicing broad circles through the morning air. On the radar console inside the carrier's combat information center, the new contact is immediately tagged. Altitude 200 feet, speed 80 knots, heading directly toward the carrier strike group. The operator tightens the tracking box around the aircraft. Air contact confirmed. Iranian naval helicopter. Up on the flight deck, the distant shape becomes visible against the pale horizon. At first, it is only a dark speck above the water, small and easy to miss. But its direction is unmistakable. It is coming straight toward the carrier. Inside the Combat Information Center, no one reacts with emotion. Every movement follows procedure drilled into them through years of training. The tactical officer studies the screen. Helicopter range 60 nautical miles. Another officer answers at once. Recommend airborne intercept. The captain nods once. Launch the fighters. Within seconds, the order spreads across the carrier. Flight deck, scramble 2. On the massive flight deck, yellow shirt directors move with sudden urgency. Deck crews signal with glowing batons as the first FA-18 Super Hornet is rolled into position. Steam begins to rise from the catapult track. Pilots climb into their cockpits while ground crews complete the final checks. Above them, the Iranian helicopter keeps moving closer. Inside the Combat Information Center, the radar screen shows the range tightening, 14 nautical miles. Below that airborne contact, the 5 Iranian warships continue adjusting their positions. Their formation has widened even more now, the semicircle stretching across several miles of open water. They are no longer simply approaching, they are positioning. At 5:29, the first Super Hornet launches. The catapult fires with a powerful burst, sending the jet forward in a streak of steel and vapor. Seconds later, the second fighter launches as well, climbing sharply into the morning sky above the carrier strike group. Within moments, both aircraft are racing toward the incoming helicopter, altitude rising quickly, speed climbing past 400 knots. From the cockpit of the Iranian helicopter, the approaching fighters would now be impossible to ignore. But the helicopter does not turn. It keeps moving forward. Inside the Combat Information Center, another alert appears on the electronic warfare console. Surface radar emissions increasing. The Iranian warships have stepped up their radar activity. Multiple sensors sweep across the American fleet. The electronic warfare officer begins recording the new signals. 5 ships scanning, pattern consistent with targeting search. Not a direct targeting lock, but close enough to get attention. The distance between the fleets continues to shrink, 9 nautical miles. On the radar screen, 2 of the Iranian vessels adjust course again, moving closer to the carrier's projected path. Their wakes stretch behind them in long lines of white foam, cutting through the darker water. One of the destroyer escorts reports visual contact. Iranian ships maneuvering aggressively. High above the water, the 2 American fighters approach the helicopter from opposite angles. The lead pilot checks his range. 3 miles. 2. His voice remains calm as he speaks over the radio. Iranian helicopter, you are approaching a United States carrier strike group. Alter course immediately. No response. Instead, the helicopter banks slightly and descends closer to the surface. Its altitude drops to barely 100 feet above the waves. The move appears deliberate. Inside the Combat Information Center, the radar officer watches the change. Helicopter now running low profile. Flying that low reduces radar visibility, but it also sends a message of confidence. The fighters remain above it now, faster, higher, in complete control of the airspace. They are not there to escalate, they are there to watch. Below them, the Iranian warships continue moving forward. 7 nautical miles. 6. Inside the destroyer escort closest to the approaching ships, new data appears on the consoles. A narrow radar beam sweeps across the formation again, stronger this time. The electronic warfare officer's voice tightens slightly. Possible targeting radar spike from one Iranian vessel. The room goes quiet. Targeting radar means the systems aboard those ships may now be calculating firing solutions. Still not an engagement, but one step closer. At 5:33, something else appears on the radar display. small, fast. The operator zooms in. 4 tiny contacts separate from one of the Iranian ships and begin racing across the water. Their speed climbs quickly, 30 knots, then 40. Inside the Combat Information Center, the tactical officer recognizes the pattern immediately. Multiple small surface craft deploying. On the radar screen, the contacts spread outward like arrows. 4 Iranian fast attack boats are now heading directly toward the carrier strike group at full speed. Distance, 5 nautical miles, and closing quickly. The radar display fills with new movement. 4 small surface contacts, speed 40 knots, heading straight toward the carrier. The operator expands the tracking window. Fast attack craft confirmed. Out on the ocean surface, the boats are still difficult to see with the naked eye. Thin shapes skipping across the water, leaving long white trails behind them. But on radar, they stand out clearly. Iranian fast boats, the kind designed to close distance quickly and apply pressure at close range. Inside the carrier strike group, procedures shift immediately. The tactical officer speaks calmly. Recommend surface response posture. The captain answers without hesitation. Execute. Across the formation, systems begin to move. One of the Arleigh Burke-class destroyers shifts slightly ahead of the carrier's path, placing itself between the incoming boats and the carrier itself. The destroyer's radar immediately locks onto the small craft. Inside its Combat Information Center, the fire control system begins calculating range, heading, and speed. No weapons are released, but everything is ready. On the destroyer's forward deck, the massive 5-inch gun slowly turns. Steel pivots with quiet precision. From the perspective of the Iranian boats racing across the water, the movement would be impossible to miss. A message without words. Above them, the 2 Super Hornets circle tightly, maintaining altitude while watching the situation unfold below. One pilot lowers his aircraft slightly, dipping closer to the water to observe the boats directly. The radio channel opens again. Iranian vessels approaching a United States carrier strike group. Reduce speed immediately. The message repeats. First in English, then in Persian. No reply. On the radar screens, the boats continue closing. 4 nautical miles. 3. Inside the destroyer's Combat Information Center, the closest point of approach keeps updating. CPA. 1 nautical mile. Too close. At that distance, even small boats become unpredictable. The tactical officer studies their speed. They're not slowing. The destroyer's captain speaks calmly. Prepare warning shot. The order moves instantly through the ship. On the forward deck, the gun crew locks the 5-inch cannon into position. Coordinates load into the fire control computer. The target point is not the boats themselves. Open water, directly in front of them, just a wall of water. At 5:36, the cannon fires. The blast echoes across the Persian Gulf like thunder. A single shell arcs low over the water. Seconds later, it slams into the sea several hundred meters ahead of the Iranian boats. A massive column of white spray erupts into the air. The effect is immediate. Inside the Combat Information Center, radar confirms a sudden shift in speed. The boats hesitate. One veers slightly to port, another drifts right. But 2 of them continue forward. Distance now 2 nautical miles. Above the scene, another aircraft joins the formation. From the carrier's deck, a Seahawk helicopter lifts into the air, its rotors beating heavily against the warm Gulf air. Within seconds, it accelerates forward, flying low toward the incoming boats. The Seahawk drops to just 200 feet above the waterline, closing the distance quickly. Inside the cockpit, the sensor operator activates the helicopter's electro-optical system. The boats appear clearly on the monitor. 4 gray hulls. Crew members visible on deck, engines roaring. The Seahawk pilot banks sharply, positioning the helicopter between the boats and the carrier. Then a warning appears. A narrow green beam of light flashes across the surface of the lead boat. The helicopter's laser designator locks onto the vessel's bridge windows. Non-lethal, but unmistakable. The radio transmission follows immediately. Iranian fast craft, you are approaching a United States carrier strike group in an unsafe manner. Reduce speed and alter course immediately. The helicopter circles once, the green laser briefly sweeping across the other boats. Inside the destroyer's Combat Information Center, radar confirms the situation remains tense. 2 boats begin slowing, but the other 2 continue forward. Distance, 1.5 nautical miles. Then something new appears on the electronic warfare console. A sharp spike. The operator looks up instantly. Radar emission from one Iranian warship increasing. Another officer checks the frequency. The signal is different now. More focused, more precise. The electronic warfare officer speaks carefully. Possible fire control radar lock. Inside the Combat Information Center, the room goes silent. A fire control radar lock means the Iranian ship may now be preparing its weapon systems. Not a launch, not yet, but very close. Above the water, the Seahawk helicopter continues circling. The two remaining fast boats are now just over a mile from the destroyer escort. Behind them, one of the larger Iranian warships slowly turns its bow toward the carrier strike group. Then something moves on its deck. A hatch opens along the center line of the ship. Inside the Combat Information Center, the radar operator narrows his eyes at the screen. Possible missile launcher activity on Iranian vessel. The captain looks toward the tactical display. No one speaks for a moment. Then the electronic warfare officer says what everyone in the room is already thinking. Targeting radar confirmed. The moment the signal is confirmed, the atmosphere inside the Combat Information Center shifts. Not louder, not chaotic, just sharper. Fire control radar confirmed, the officer repeats. On the tactical display, a narrow beam of energy from the Iranian warship is now directed toward the carrier strike group. That signal means one thing. The ship's targeting computer is calculating firing solutions. Inside the carrier, the captain gives the next order quietly. Set Condition 1. Across the entire strike group, the command spreads within seconds. Condition 1. Full combat readiness. Missile crews move into position inside the vertical launch systems. Radar operators lock onto every Iranian vessel now within range. Fire control systems align automatically. No one fires, but every system is ready. Above the water, the Seahawk helicopter continues circling low over the Iranian speedboats. The green laser designator still pulses across the lead vessel's bridge windows, impossible to ignore. Inside the helicopter cockpit, the pilot glances at the distance marker, 1.2 nautical miles. Too close. The radio call goes out again. Iranian fast craft, you are approaching a United States carrier strike group in an unsafe manner. Alter course immediately. For a moment, nothing changes. The two leading boats still surge forward across the water. Behind them, the larger Iranian warship continues turning slowly toward the American formation. On its deck, the missile launcher hatch remains open. Inside the destroyer escort, the Combat Information Center tracks every movement. The CPA calculation updates again. Closest point of approach, under 1 nautical mile. At that distance, reaction time shrinks to seconds. High above, the two Super Hornets shift position again, dropping lower across the sky. Their engines rumble as they pass over the Iranian boats in a fast, controlled flyover. Not aggressive, but unmistakable. A reminder of the aircraft overhead. Inside the Seahawk helicopter, the sensor operator zooms the camera tighter. Faces on the boats become visible. Men gripping railings, engines roaring. But then something changes. The lead boat slows. Not dramatically, just enough for the radar operator aboard the destroyer to notice. Speed dropping, 40 knots, 32. Seconds later, the second boat does the same. The Seahawk circles again, maintaining position. The green laser remains steady. Another radio call follows. Reduce speed immediately. For several long seconds, the boats continue drifting forward through the churning water behind them. Then the lead vessel shifts slightly, just a few degrees. Not enough to signal a retreat, but no longer aimed directly at the carrier strike group. Inside the destroyer's Combat Information Center, the radar officer calls it out. Lead craft altering heading, another operator confirms. Speed now 28 knots. The tension inside the room doesn't disappear, but it changes. Because the radar consoles are still showing something else. Behind the boats, the larger Iranian warship continues transmitting its fire control radar beam. The signal remains steady, focused on the formation. Inside the electronic warfare console, the operator studies the frequency carefully. Then suddenly, the signal vanishes. No warning, no gradual fade, just silence. The targeting radar shuts down. The operator checks again. Radar lock lost. Out on the water, the shift spreads slowly through the Iranian formation. The two fast boats pull their throttles back. The spray around their hulls settles as their speed drops. They begin drifting sideways across the waves. Behind them, the warship that had opened its launcher hatch starts turning away, slowly and deliberately. Moments later, the hatch on its deck slides shut. Inside the carrier strike group, radar continues tracking every movement. On the bridge, the captain doesn't celebrate. He simply watches. At 5:41, the first Iranian warship completes its turn away from the American formation. Then the second, then the third. The semicircle that had been forming around the carrier strike group slowly breaks apart. Distance begins increasing, 1 nautical mile, 2, 3. Above the water, the Seahawk helicopter makes one final pass around the slowing boats. The green laser disappears. The helicopter climbs slightly and banks back toward the carrier. Inside the Combat Information Center, the radar operator exhales quietly. The tactical officer studies the display. Contacts withdrawing. For several minutes, the carrier strike group maintains its formation. Weapons still ready. Sensors still tracking. But the immediate danger is fading. 5 Iranian warships that had approached aggressively only minutes earlier are now moving steadily away across the Persian Gulf. No weapons fired, no direct engagement. Just a tense encounter that came dangerously close to something far worse. Inside the Combat Information Center, one officer quietly sums it up. They pushed the line. The captain looks at the radar screen one last time before turning away. And they found it. For several minutes after the Iranian ships begin turning away, the carrier strike group does not move. No course correction, no celebration. Inside the Combat Information Center, every radar console remains focused on the departing contacts. Distance continues increasing. 3 nautical miles. 4, 5. The 5 Iranian warships that had closed in earlier now spread farther apart across the horizon, their formation loosening as they head back toward open water. High above them, the 2 Super Hornets continue circling at altitude, their engines humming steadily in the warm Gulf air. Their radar systems track the retreating ships while the Seahawk helicopter heads back toward the carrier, climbing to 500 feet. Inside the helicopter cockpit, the sensor operator saves the final footage. Every movement of the Iranian vessels, every turn, every radar sweep. Time-stamped, geolocated, recorded. Back aboard the carrier, the electronic warfare officer studies the captured signals scrolling across his console. What just happened on the surface lasted less than 30 minutes, but the information gathered during that time may prove far more valuable than the encounter itself. Every radar frequency used by the Iranian ships is now logged. Every emission pattern from their sensors has been captured. And most importantly, the brief fire control radar lock that appeared earlier has been recorded in full detail. To an intelligence officer, a signal like that is a fingerprint. It reveals the type of targeting system the ship uses, its operating range, how the signal behaves, even the rhythm of its tracking software. Data like that can make future encounters far more predictable. Inside the Combat Information Center, the tactical officer summarizes quietly. Electronic signatures confirmed on all 5 vessels. The information moves instantly through the carrier's network to analysts aboard the cruiser escort and beyond the strike group itself. Satellites overhead continue watching the Iranian ships as they move back toward the coastline. On the bridge, the captain finally gives the next order. Maintain course. The carrier does not chase. It does not escalate. Instead, the massive ship continues cutting forward through the water, its wake stretching white behind the hull as the strike group resumes its patrol route. Within the hour, flight operations begin again. On the deck, yellow shirt directors guide another Super Hornet toward the catapult. Steam rolls across the flight deck as the aircraft launches into the sky, returning the carrier to its steady rhythm. To an observer miles away, nothing about the scene would suggest that the fleet had come within moments of a serious escalation. But inside the sensors and systems of the strike group, the encounter is already being analyzed. Every radar ping replayed, every course change studied. Because moments like this are rarely random. Iranian naval doctrine has often relied on pressure tactics, fast boats, close approaches, aggressive radar sweeps designed to test the reactions of larger fleets. Sometimes the goal is political signaling, sometimes it is intelligence gathering, and sometimes it is simply a reminder that the Persian Gulf remains one of the most tightly contested waterways on the planet. But this time, the test worked both ways. The Iranian ships approached a U.S. carrier strike group expecting to demonstrate presence. Instead, they revealed something else. Their radar systems, their response times, their tactics. Information that now lives permanently inside the databases of the U.S. Navy. Inside the Combat Information Center, the radar screen slowly returns to its normal pattern, distant shipping lanes and scattered civilian vessels. The 5 Iranian contacts are now more than 20 nautical miles away. Still visible, but no longer a threat. The tactical officer reviews the final report. No weapons fired, no damage. All systems normal. The captain nods once, then turns back toward the horizon. Encounters like this rarely make headlines. There are no explosions, no dramatic launches, just steel ships maneuvering across open water while hundreds of sensors quietly watch every move. But in modern naval operations, those quiet moments often matter the most, because the next encounter will happen somewhere across the same waters. And when it does, both sides will remember exactly how close this one came to crossing the line.